Now that I think about my mother, there was just parts of herself she didn't like that was projected onto me. And this resulted in her one day looking at me and telling me, hey, you're not coming with me. Have you ever felt like life just handed you the wrong cards? Today we're going to talk about how to turn your disadvantages into advantages, even if life doesn't seem like it's on your side. Look, there are just some things that you are going to have disadvantages in that may be outside of your control, that you didn't do, that you didn't cause. But there comes a point where you need to learn how to make that not so ideal situations turn into advantages. I did my previous video about how I went from being unhappy to being content and did a full 180 being single. And I saw a comment on that video that caught my attention. And this beautiful woman said, it's hard doing that while homeless because you're around so many helpless, miserable people that I can't continue to feel sorry for. And they are all jealous of me, no assistance, no conversation, and shelters, and have bad energy. And the question I've always had is, how do I turn it around when I'm in a situation where I didn't put myself in there? And I don't have anyone to pull me out. I don't have anyone to save me. I don't have anyone to magically appear and be like, hey, I just change your situation. Now, how many of you guys can relate to that? This video is for the woman who didn't have an ideal upbringing or a silver spoon in her mouth. I'm speaking to the woman right now whose life doesn't look ideally how she imagined it or how she hoped it to be. I'm going to share my story with you because I want to change the perspective about having disadvantages in your life and how you could see advantages in your life and use it to your advantage. You see what I did there? Pun intended. So exit out this video if this video is not for you. This is for the woman who is in a season of changing her life, who has experienced trauma, who has had people hurt them, abandon them, been rejected, and basically just hasn't had life work in their favor. I was born at a disadvantage. I didn't have the typical family. I didn't have the typical supporting and loving parents. So much so that I ended up being a favorite for my grandfather, but I called him dad all the same. He was the one person that I believed that he loved me. From a very young age, I quickly saw how the women in my family generationally upheld men in their lives, made wrong decisions around them, centered men in their lives. And these were very successful women in my family. But when it came to men, the weakness. And as a result of that, I got to see a lot of the women hurt, not living their best lives, and not really seeing the full potential of what really life is. And even mental health issues. This is where it all started, of me feeling like I didn't belong and didn't do anything correct. I was constantly told, stop bad talking, stop bad talking. So right away, I was being silenced and not able to express myself. And if you come from a Caribbean family, you would understand this, but it was toxic. Now that I think about my mother, there was just parts of herself she didn't like that was projected onto me. And this resulted in her one day looking at me and telling me, hey, you're not coming with me. You're not coming with me because I don't want you to mess up my marriage. My heart just dropped out of myself. And at that time, I believe I was only working part-time. I was going to school, so I was nowhere stable to have my own place. And I remember immediately my mind was going and I was like, am I gonna be homeless? What's gonna happen? And I remember she had the movers, they took all the stuff, they moved to their house, and she left me in that empty apartment. And I remember lying on that cold floor. I lay on that cold floor, and I'll never forget it. And it was just so painful because it was like, how could someone bring you into this world that they were responsible for and leave me there and choose not to be responsible and not take any responsibility? And I had many choices. I could have easily just given up and said, you know what, if I end up on the street, so be it. I could have easily tried to find some man and be like, come and take care of me. Come on, baby. Come take care of me. I could have stayed mute and not told anyone and just be embarrassed and not share with anyone to get help. I could have just chose to do things that I was not supposed to. So you want to talk about being at a disadvantage? That's a disadvantage right there. That seems like it's not possible to turn around. I could have given up on God and threw away my faith and said, you know what? Enough is enough. This was the family you have given me. And now I'm going to give up because I feel like you have failed me. I could have done that. I could have sit back and let life happen to me because why should I fight for it? I didn't give myself life. I could have ran with those disadvantages. Or the other option was I can choose to be inspired and take what was meant to be a disadvantage and find the learning moments in the areas that were most painful that would later be advantages in the future. Challenges are an opportunity to reveal your maximum capacity of what you never thought you could have handled. Do you know how many people would give up with your certain situation and you overcame it? What? You know how many people would not be standing here right now if that happened to them? But fortunately, I had my faith. It's like I was equipped. God equipped me and gave me a church. You see, remember all that support I said I didn't have? From 14 years old, God called me to church. And in such a time, I didn't even know that was gonna happen. I was so fortunate that I was able to go to my pastors and then I was able to get help. I actually got to see how strong I was despite those things happening. I got to see how fast I could get on my feet and make decisions. I got to see what I was made of. I got to see that someone else's downfall didn't break me down. I got to see the power of asking for what you need. Do you know how much it has helped me today? I would tell this story one day, but I actually was able to get a mentor because of this that helped me grow a business because I asked. So it developed a boldness because of that situation. It made me learn that if you are in your lowest moments, you don't need to be embarrassed and you could always ask for help. People are willing to help you. People are not against you. Now, I'm not saying that everyone will help you, but it just showed me that there are such great people out there that are willing to help you. It showed me a different perspective of people because I just experienced someone failing me. So I could easily say, oh, all people are bad. But I got to see an advantage in this where it taught me the power of people, the power of relationship, and the power of boldness. Don't you ever get quiet or mute, no matter the situation, no matter how low you are. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Living with little and almost nothing, my worth is not defined by material possessions. You are not defined by your disadvantages. It does not mean that you are less than or you are worthless. And if you have been in this situation, it means that this is a good thing. Because it means that no matter where you are in life, it means that there's always an opportunity to change. There's always an opportunity for the situation to change. It means that it's not stuck in one way. Situations are always temporary. So it means that there's an opportunity for it to get better. Every time you see a disadvantage, this is your reminder that something's gonna get better. It has to get better. There's nothing that can get worse and worse and stay like that. Your character is what stays. Your identity is what stays. Everything that happens externally is what could change. The variables can always change. But those two things never change. And as much as it was a disadvantage to start from a little, start from nothing, To this day, it has helped me so much. It has helped me to be grateful for the process, because now I understand the process and I don't get impatient when it comes to a process. When I'm starting at anything, or when I'm learning something from scratch and I don't know anything, I now understand that if you keep at something, that eventually it develops, it blossoms. So you have to understand that if you're in a situation where you are in lack, it doesn't stay there as long as you don't want it to. As long as you continue to grow and you continue to develop, it's absolutely impossible for things not to change and get better. It's absolutely not possible for you to get results if you're continuing to push through and change. Where I started from getting help and, going to people's houses, then I eventually got an apartment and I started paying a really small rent. The ceiling was just caving in. And there was little mice in there. It was disgusting. And then eventually I moved to a bigger room, a really nicer place. And I was living in a room with a really big window. And then eventually I moved into my own place. So proof, it doesn't stay there. It does not stay there. And you have to know that things get better as long as you have the right mindset. Don't worry, we're gonna touch on that today in this video, how to make those changes. But I'm just sharing my learning moments from that exact moment. Each setback is an opportunity to develop problem-solving skills and adaptability. How would you grow if you didn't have setbacks? You need adversity and challenges in order to grow. Have you ever seen a spoiled child or a spoiled friend? Think of that spoiled friend who you've seen where they've gotten everything handed to them. Nothing against them, I'm always good. But here's the thing I noticed is they are not equipped for life. They don't have street smarts. If you speak to them, they don't know how to do certain things. They don't know anything about pushing through, learning how to push through in hard problems. Usually they'll be the first ones to just give up because they're used to everything being easy. What I notice about people who experience disadvantages, they're one of the most successful people. Go and read some very successful people's, maybe I'll do a video on that. Go and read people's stories who have been successful, and most of the time, you're gonna notice the people who are successful are the ones who have had the most hardest backgrounds, the most disadvantages. Disadvantages make you successful. It teaches you all these life skills that you need for every other area. Do you know, because of these disadvantages, I'm very tight when it comes to problem solving? Listen, if I see a problem, I don't back down. I will find a solution and keep on trying until I figure it out. I'm like an archaeologist. Well, I'll keep on digging and digging and digging until I find the answers. But most people are like that. So you have to understand, you are like an archaeologist where you keep on digging and digging and digging and digging until you find a solution. When you have a disadvantage, you're trying to find that advantage. You are one step ahead of someone who doesn't have any disadvantages at all. If everything is always perfect, you have no opportunities to learn how to grow and problem solve. How can you strengthen your skills and your life skills and go through life if you have no challenges? Every time you have a challenge, it makes you stronger. I know people always say that, but it's true. Those setbacks really taught me about life and not giving up. It taught me to keep on going. It showed me that if you keep on going, things eventually do get better. Problem solving is one of the best things you could have in your life, because when you overcome that obstacle, whoa, there's always something better on the other side. When you lose that job and you overcome that obstacle and then you apply for another job and then you end up getting a better job, that's it, baby. When you're having a slow month in your business and it's not going the way that you imagined it to be, and you keep on going, you overcome the obstacle, and then you finally get to your first $1,000 month and you're like, oh. When you're confused about your purpose and you didn't know what it was, and then all of a sudden you go into archaeologist mode. I got that from Ali Abdel, by the way. I just want to credit him. And you go into that archaeologist mode, and then you finally find that purpose that you didn't give up on. That's a win when you find it out, because now it only gets better from there. Because I got to live on my own, I got to learn how to cook rice from scratch on the stove. You know how many people, no shade though, use rice cookers? And you know how proud I am When I tell them, no, I know how to cook rice from scratch, baby. I cook it right on the stove. Do you know how many friends I have will look at me and be like, how do you pay for your own apartment? And I'm like, babe. I'm like, listen, what I went through, my disadvantages. And I overcame those disadvantages. And that's how I'm able to own my place. In a place where the cost of living is so high. Yes, baby, I'm able to pay my rent by myself and still have money left over. Blessings. Don't ever think your disadvantage is not there for a reason. And you know what? I believe that people sometimes stay in a disadvantage is because, remember I talked about that process. And no shade here because it took me many years, right? I told you in part 1, right? That other video, it took me many years. But I believe that if you choose to give up and accept life, it's not gonna get better. The disadvantage will keep on coming and coming and coming and coming until you choose to overcome the obstacle. Until you choose to figure it out. And then it gets better. But if you choose not to figure it out and continue to be like, woe is me, my situation is not getting better. You continue having this pity party and you continue reciting the story. Oh God, please stop. Don't recite the story over and over to get sympathy. That's one of the worst things you can do, is keep on telling the story and reciting it over and over. Because every time it just puffs you up and it makes you want to stay there. Because that's the only way that you're getting sympathy from people. You don't need sympathy from people. What you need is to overcome those disadvantages and turn them to advantages. And I want to make this clear. I'm not giving shade to anyone that's been, going to struggles for many years and all this stuff. But what I'm saying is that usually when you're getting an obstacle, when God is allowing you to go through something, it's usually for a reason. There's something on the other side that you need to do. So that way when you get bigger problems, you'll be like, oh, I went through this. I know there's going to be a good outcome from this. It has to be baby steps, right? It makes you stronger. It just improves your character. And if you need some picking up and you need a reminder of who you are and what your purpose is, listen, watch this video the next time life is not going your way. Oh, you are gonna get pumped up from that video. When I got let go from my job, and this was the first time that I've ever experienced this because I've always left my previous jobs. I remember sitting in a taxi and I just cried. And I was like, oh my gosh. It brought thoughts back, right? To that moment of being almost homeless. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna be homeless. And I'm not gonna be able to pay my bills and pay my rent because I was living paycheck to paycheck. Back then I didn't see it though. That was an obstacle to overcome. But I was like, man, am I gonna go back here again? That fear came. But here's the biggest thing I learned from that situation. When one door closes, there's an opportunity on the other side. You need to get excited. When you see a disadvantage happen, you need to get excited because there's usually a reason that door is closing. It usually means another door needs to be open. Listen to me. I know it's hard to see in that moment, especially when you're in a situation, that it's gonna get better. You hear people say this all the time. I know that. But I'm sharing this with you today because I've seen it firsthand. I got to see that job that I lost was a disadvantage. But you know what ended up happening a few weeks later? I opened a business. And that was the first business that I made my first dollar online. That business was the first time that it allowed me. It was the first time it gave me the opportunity to finally see what it's like to not be depressed at work and unhappy at work. It gave me the opportunity to learn about myself and my strengths and not be drowning and in working in my weaknesses. God took me in places I shouldn't have gone. He took me in places where people shouldn't go. I shouldn't have had that opportunity. I had all those disadvantages. I was left in a cold, empty apartment. But you see, setbacks, it builds something in you to overcome so things just get better and better. I honestly believe if I didn't have those setbacks, I probably won't be where I am today. He took an abandoned wrench like me and transformed me. Do you know how much God cares about you? That he allowed me to go through that, see the transformation, and be standing here to tell you this story and hopefully relate to you who have been going through disadvantages so I can share this to you to motivate you and hopefully inspire you and tell you to keep going. That's how much God cares about you. Lord, I think it's crazy. I never thought back then that I would ever tell this story because it's painful and be standing here sharing this with you. I want to give you practical steps on how you can start seeing your life as an advantage, because as long as you continue to see your life as a disadvantage, it's hard to move forward. If you stay a victim, it's hard to overcome the disadvantages. And it's hard for the advantages to be revealed. There are always missed opportunities when you choose to be a victim. Every time you choose to say, woe is me. Why is this happening to me? And you're having these pity parties where you're like, I'm tired of this. I'm not good enough. My life sucks. Stop it. It's hard to see the bigger picture if you are so deep in that victim mentality. Because the truth is, it means that if you're in a victim mentality, it's almost like you're waiting for someone to jump in and say, hey, let's take all that pain away and get your life all perfect. But it doesn't happen that way. It starts with believing that you're not a victim and you are actually the hero that you are. You are a leader and you are most likely not going to take a risk on yourself. You're not. And how can you if you're in that state of mind to take risk on yourself and do things that you wouldn't have done because you're going to be stuck in that mindset of being a victim? You have the power to choose to see your potential and run with it. God gives everyone something to run with. There's something in you that God has given you to overcome those obstacles that you may not even know you have, but it's there. Because you wouldn't have overcame your previous obstacles if you didn't have something in you. You have the power to step up as a leader and take what you went through and see it turn around. And maybe you live to tell that testimonial. Or maybe you even start a YouTube channel and inspire someone else. Do you know that when I told that story a couple weeks ago about being behind a rent, you could always go back to that video. Do you know a couple months later, I ended up on a sales call with a woman that was so low. Like, she was obviously very discouraged. And I didn't end up conducting a sales call. And I ended up sharing that exact testimonial about me being behind the rent and the lack and how I overcame it. I remember laughing to myself because I never thought I was going to share that exact moment. I was like, very funny, God. Very funny. What you are going through right now, or what you went through, there is someone out there that needs to hear how you overcame it. There's someone out there that is in your shoes a week ago, a month ago, years ago, that needs to hear that exact testimony of you overcoming that obstacle. There is someone out there that needs to know that you won. If you view yourself as a victim and as someone that can't inspire someone because you are at a disadvantage, you won't be able to inspire that very person that's going through the obstacle that needed you to overcome that obstacle. So overcome it. Win it. Just because you thought it doesn't mean it's the truth. It doesn't mean it's absolute. I spent too many years stuck in a mindset thinking just because it happened, it was the way it was, and I wasn't able to change it. But there came a point where I wanted to figure it out because I knew there had to be something better than the way I was thinking. And so I set out on my journey of research. If you know me, I love research. But anyways, I found this book called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. And that was one of those books where it completely changed my life because he teaches the principle that what you think can actually happen. So you are actually in control of how your life happened. And I know it sounds woo-woo because it took me a while to wrap my mind around it because he was like, what you think it happens. What I learned from that book is that if you have disadvantages, you do not have to accept it. You can speak aloud advantages that you want to happen that you may not see yet, but you can start speaking it and telling yourself, oh, no, this is what's happening. What I see here doesn't mean that this is what it is. And by faith, you can start speaking advantages that you want to see happen. If you are that person right now that has a very negative mindset, and that's okay, we all do, I'm here to tell you, you could change that. And it's time to get very intentional about your mindset. It's time to get very intentional about the way you think. And it's not going to be easy. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you, oh, it's going to be a walk in the park. Because you spent many years thinking negative because of situations that you've seen, because of disadvantages. You spent many years thinking that you are on the losing end. So it's going to take some work. But this thing works. Everything I share with you guys, I have done. If you want to rewire the way you think, the way you feel about yourself, what starts to happen around you, and you want to see like things that you've been dreaming about come to fruition, you need to start doing affirmations. It could be as simple as writing on a cue card. I highly recommend that you put it on physical cards and not your phone. But if you have your cue cards sitting on your desk, you see it right there and boom, boom, and you start reading them out. I recommend that you don't think too hard about it. Even if you have a hard time believing in the things that you want, you say it out loud with confidence. So right now, I said here, this is one of mine, I'll be transparent. I did it. I built a YouTube community with raving fans and have 3,000 watch hours and 500 subscribers. And I'm now making 5K a month. This is one of my affirmations. I could be the first millionaire. I have a YouTube channel with viral, impactful content videos. Go back to the comments in part 1 of this video and read it. How many people are inspired and I touch? I've been speaking these affirmations every time I do these videos. It works. I used to always say when I had my other business, it was an Amazon business, I am making $10,000 a month in my Amazon business. And I went on about my life. I didn't worry about what was on my cue card and what I was speaking into and saying, how is it going to happen? I just kept on saying it. And I remember months later, I actually got to 10K and didn't even realize it. And I was like, wait, I've been reciting this and it happened. If you're a Christian, affirmations get even more powerful. If you start putting Bible verses and you start declaring them, it can change your life. So one of the things I did when I was in lack and behind in rent is I started reciting a verse. And every day I would renew my mind and remind myself how God was in charge of my needs and I didn't have to worry about money. I would take walks and recite that scripture. And immediately I felt the worry go away. Literally my mindset was changing and literally I saw my situation turn around. Affirmations are a weapon. If you're telling yourself that you don't have no money and that's a thought that always goes in your mind, you know what you do? You take out an affirmation and say, I always have money for my bills. I always have $2,000 a month extra in my account. And you'll be surprised how everything starts just aligning. Everything just starts to work in that favor. Because what happens is subconsciously, you're putting it forefront in your mind. So you don't forget it. You're reminding yourself every day about that goal. I don't know what my purpose is. You know what you say? God is giving me witty ideas. God has told me my purpose. I know what my purpose is. I'm getting purpose-driven idea that I'm passionate about. The goal is you're saying everything that's contrary to what you usually tell yourself, that story you're telling yourself. You are rewiring the way you think so that way life becomes the way you want it to be. And look, you could say right now, well, you know, what's the point of doing affirmations? Because you have to wrap your mind around it. But you know what? We spent so many times being negative. If you have the chance to be intentional and be positive, why wouldn't you do that instead so you could feel better? Even if you felt better, why would you just want to constantly worry and stay in the mindset of, oh my God, what's gonna happen? I don't know. Who wants to stay in that like energy? Who wants to stay in that? You're better off speaking words of encouragement over yourself, speaking words of life, speaking words of faith, things that you're believing for every single day and reciting them until you see it happen. Keep on doing it. Don't give up. Change that mindset. Do it every day. If you're more comfortable, journal it. But recite it every day out loud. Have you ever set goals and then you forgot it happened? It's because you're not reciting it and reminding yourself. This is why you need to say it every day. Your life right now is a result of the thought patterns in your past. So what you have right now is your thought pattern that you had in the past. Maybe the reason you're going through that very thing is you need to learn a new skill, or it's time for you to do that very thing that's been on your mind. Sometimes when we're uncomfortable, we don't do the thing that we know we're supposed to do. I believe that's why setbacks are there, because it's there to push you forward. Because some of us, when we're comfortable, we're like, nah, God, I'm not doing anything. I would stay doing that same thing over and over. I'm a good God. I'm good. If you don't like the way your life is right now, and you're down and out of luck, and I don't like using that word, but you get the point, and you feel like you are at a disadvantage, it's time to do all these tips that you've heard in this video and be intentional about it and figure out what skill is it that you need to learn. You need to make the changes. Something needs to change. Even when I was living with those mices with a caved-in rooftop in that little apartment, do you know I was still trying to make YouTube videos back then? But you know what I learned from that? You know what advantage I saw? Is that I saw a girl that was full of hope, and she tried making videos even though her situation wasn't so ideal. I still took a risk on myself. There was still a glimmer of hope. You see, some of you guys, when things don't work out, you look at it as a complete disadvantage. But usually there's an advantage because there's a skill that you learn from that situation, even though it didn't get to its fullest potential. But there was a skill that you developed. If you don't try to make a change, how on earth can you see change happen? If you're feeling stuck, you have to figure out how to get unstuck, even if it's small little steps like an ant. You need to figure it out. You have to figure it out. There's someone out there that needs to be inspired by you. I would even go as far as saying, stop telling people your situations that's not working in your favor, because in a sense is that every time you're telling that story, it's like subconsciously you're telling your mind, hey, this is okay. Like, let's call it more of this, lack, and me not having money and things not working for me. Stop telling people. Stop telling people. I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk to a therapist, but stop telling it and living in that situation. Because believe it or not, there's such thing as negative affirmations. Just like there's positive affirmations, it's negative affirmation. So that story you're reciting over and over and telling people, you're saying affirmations every time. When people ask you how everything is going, speak a good affirmation. Say, hey, everything is going good. Don't put it out there. Okay? How can I stay motivated even though I feel like everything is falling apart around me? I once had this coach, and every time I was depressed or very low, you know what the first question she would ask me? Nakia, are you reading the books that I recommended? And I'm like, no. Right away, she said, you need to be reading those books every week. You need to be filling your cup and inspiring yourself so you stay in the right mindset. You cannot be in a setback and not have something else filling your cup. So that may mean like listening to a sermon that inspires you, listening to a motivational talk, listening to videos like these to keep you going. You have to understand it's a constant battle that you're overcoming. So when you feel like you're in your setback, you need to have a go-to of things that you do to make sure that your cup is full and gets you out of that funk. Because the longer you stay in that funk, all you will see is a disadvantage and just stay there. Head over to this video about affirmations. I actually recite them with you, and it's the exact affirmations I used to help me with financial lack. And when I felt like I had so many needs, it changed my life. It's a video that you could keep on going to over and over again.